Hey guys, so my name is Stephen Tamman, and today I'm going to be going over the review and the retrospective for the first sprint I had trying to organize some of the work that I do in my personal life external to my job. So, as you can see over at the top right-hand corner here on the burn down, I did not actually end up completing much of the work I had tasked for myself in this sprint. Now, some of that is just because I was bad and didn't drag the tasks to doing and done for some of these things that I actually did do. You'll see that when I go through the review. So I did make these videos. I haven't quite finished posting the slides and linking them on the website and everything yet. Um, but there were reasons for this. And before we jump into all that, though, I will start out by actually just reviewing what I did get done. So um, there's quite a bit. You can see the tabs up here in the bar. We're going to go through all of this. Hopefully, I won't drag it out too long here. But as I say, this is going to be the time when I go over what I did do and then what went well and what didn't go so well. So those are the things that are part of the retro, so that in coming sprints, so when I do this again in the future, I will have hopefully learned something so that we do work more effectively and work better in the future. So the first thing that we're going to talk about here are all of the things that I got done that I actually did do. So even if I didn't drag all the tasks here, and even if the burn down is not very pretty, well, I did do things. So first thing I'm going to talk about is some of the videos that went up on the ministry YouTube channel. So um, two playlists here. The study that is my own, which launched basically right before we did this sprint. I think I maybe had one video up there. Well, we have 6 videos there now. And so I believe it was videos 2, the question and answers for 2, and 3, and the questions and answers for 3 that were part of this sprint. And so you can see all of these are up there. They're anywhere from like 15 minutes to 35 minutes or so. We're trying to keep the length down here so that they're more approachable. So those 4 were this sprint. And then we also have six videos from this sprint in the general Bible study discussion group that I run, going through this other study. So 56.1, so parts 1, 2, and 3 from week 56, and then parts 1, 2, and 3 from week 57. All of those got up from this sprint as well. Now, something of particular note on these from the discussion group is that since we don't have predetermined topics on these, I actually have to go and build timestamps kind of by hand. And I made the decision that just because they're useful, and I want to be able to link people to these and have them be a resource that are useful to others moving forward rather than just being a static video, I decided to actually take my time on these and make sure I did it right. As you can see here, when we have the timestamps on these videos, we have quite a bit of description that summarizes exactly what we're talking about at any given point in time. So timestamping the videos that I make myself are easier because I'm in control of the topics. And so basically it's just going from slide to side and saying, okay, that's when we made the transition. But for these discussions that we have here in our discussion group that are less bounded, so less planned, it's still very useful to make that topical outline that people can click to in the video so that you can link to specific topics. But also here, you can see this serves very much as a summary of what we actually did talk about. So, if someone doesn't want to go through this entire video that's more than 30 minutes, well, if they read this, they read the timestamps and then they read the general summary, well, they'll have a pretty good idea of what it is we talked about. So it's kind of like the SparkNotes version, if you will. All right, so that's that right there, what I just showed. So that's 4 videos, 6 videos, that's 10 videos. That is actually the production pace of what will be put up every sprint. So every 2 weeks, there will be 10 new videos put up on this YouTube channel. So that's 5 videos a week. And I'll get back into the time breakdown of that a little bit more once we get into the retro part of this. So, of course, all of this took time. This was a larger time expenditure over these last 2 weeks. I also put some videos up on my personal YouTube channel. So that's the one that this video itself will actually get posted to. And none of this stuff was actually planned. And in fact, as you'll see, that's one of the reasons why I didn't necessarily get so much work done on that task breakdown itself, is because a lot of the stuff I did do, well, I hadn't really accounted for it. This is normal even when you use Agile planning it work. I mean, you try to minimize it. You try to minimize so-called scope creep or, diverging from the plan you make. But, since this is just me organizing my work personally, if I don't stick to this, nothing really bad happens. I'm not trying to chain myself down in any way. So long way of saying I made some videos here on my personal YouTube channel as well. So one of them was describing the Amazon purchase I'd made. All of the stuff I bought, I had reasoning for it. You can see here I have direct links to all the products, and then all of the many links I had from the research I did. Now, I actually ended up returning the bike lock just because, well, I've been sort of dithering about biking to work for a while, and just decided, I don't have to make the decision right now. But other than that, have everything. It all came. So that was a video, but doing all the description there and all the research, that took a while. And then another video, I had to update the build image. So the build servers for Netlify, which is where I host my websites, are using the LTS versions of Ubuntu. And they were recommending that we bump our build image version there. So I made a tutorial because some other people on the support forums weren't having the easiest time understanding it. So, that's another thing I did. Then I made another video. This one's sort of off the cuff. I just decided, what? I was thinking about how to do stuff with transcripts from YouTube videos, still thinking about the structure of the videos a little bit. And so I did a video going over cleaning up some of the transcripts you can copy paste off of YouTube using regular expressions, and then also how you build in a spreadsheet program, how you can build timestamps with links. So if you want to copy all those into an HTML file, you can actually link directly to each and every timestamp using YouTube's ability to link to specific times in the video. So that's another thing that I did. It wasn't necessarily something I planned. And so I actually ended up cleaning it up. So more than what's in that video. That video was kind of me just doing it back of the napkin, kind of off the cuff as I was just doing it live. Well, I actually cleaned it all up and made a formal spreadsheet for this. So if I come down here and cut all this, you'll see that the formulas will update there. So you can see this is, how many lines? Almost 2,000 lines of timestamps from this video that was maybe, I don't know, a half hour long. And so we have these formulas here that are actually picking up the times in the videos. You can see it's an offset formula using some math here to get the correct times. And so this is picking up every other row for over here, the times, and this is picking up every other row offset by 1 to pick up the actual timestamps. And then we do some math to get the minutes and seconds in just an integer number of seconds, which is what you feed into the YouTube URL up here, right? You give it something in the query string. You do the question mark to denote the query string, and then you say t equals some integer number of seconds. Well, that's how you link to a specific time in the YouTube video. So we build all these links, and then you can copy paste these into an HTML file to let your readers do that. And that has some advantages over the transcript that you can pull up on YouTube like this. So this is great because it lets you link to specific parts of the video, and it syncs with the video. But if you ever want to do find and replace, or you want to do anything more complicated, well, then having it on a separate page actually kind of makes sense. So again, all of these things are things that I hadn't actually tasked out in the sprint, but that I ended up doing nonetheless. All right, so along those lines, here's something that was actually tasked in the sprint, and I did get a start on it. So this was writing up the index page for the documentation of the website theme. Here we go, this one. And so as you see, you see the scroll bar over here. I did get a reasonably good start on this. I'm going to have to keep going though, because I did kind of get inundated with other things. And so, the other thing is I want to make sure I do it right. I don't want to be shortchanging myself just because I had a task here with only thus and so many hours. And if it grows in scope, it grows in scope, right? I'm kind of a perfectionist, so I want to make sure that I do a good job. But this actually didn't end up getting all that much time from me because, I was figuring out all the video stuff still and, doing those other unplanned videos. And but this is something that I'll keep doing next sprint. all of the project stuff. So all of the things relating to the website itself, all of those tasks are really going to roll over. And they'll probably keep rolling over. I don't even know if we'll get to them all next sprint. They'll keep rolling over until I actually do them. But the point of this, and I'm going to keep coming back to this, is that it's trying to help me organize the work I have. So even if I don't stick with it, well, if it served its use, then I'm not going to be too sad about it. Now here is the single biggest thing that sucked time away from what I would have otherwise been doing that was unplanned. So the very first week that we were doing this split out format in our general discussion group, one of the people on our discussion group, I don't know if there was some settings with his computer or he was just a little bit far away from his mic, but he was really quiet on the recording. And I am not a quiet person, so I was very loud on the recording. And so that wasn't going to be good. People who were listening to the recording with their headphones would go from, Stephen talking very loud to my friend talking much more quietly, and that was not going to be acceptable. And so I needed to figure out a way to clean up the audio to get it so that the volume of people on the same audio call were leveled out. So I had to do a lot of research here. I actually hadn't had too much audio experience. I mean, I knew a little bit, because I had used a condenser microphone when I was holding an in-person Bible study a few years back. You see, I wrote all that up. I actually had written most of that beforehand, but hadn't actually ever posted it. But I had to do a lot of research to figure out how to do this. There's so-called audio normalization, which you can change the overall volume of an audio recording as it's encoded, and dynamic range compression, which reduces the peaks and valleys in loudness, basically. But I ended up actually going with what's called a dynamic normalizer. And so there's some very smart people who wrote these algorithms to do this sort of normalization on audio files. And so it uses something called Gaussian smoothing to even out the jumps in audio. So as you go from local peaks and you have these changes in loudness, it kind of smooths it all out. But the basic idea, not to get too off in the weeds here, is that what it will do is it will take an audio file where you have unequal speakers. So me, who's very loud, and my friend who is very quiet, and it will kind of make everything more like the same level while preserving the emphasis that we have in our speech. So if you just make everything the same level, period, well, what happens if someone is trying to make a point? So they talk slightly louder for a second. Well, you want to preserve that. So there's, like I said, some very smart people wrote audio solutions to do that. But all of this stuff, like I had almost no knowledge going into this. So I had to do a lot of research before I felt comfortable that I was doing the right thing. And then it came out. So almost the entire first weekend that I was doing the video stuff, I had to research this to make sure that I was doing what I wanted to. And so there you go. Anyone who's watching this who just wants to know, well, what's the answer? Well, that's what I decided on, using a filter, the dynamic audio normalization as a filter in the FFmpeg program to clean up the audio of the MP4 files. Okay, so that took, I never tracked it, but I would guess more than 12 hours of me doing all the research and writing everything up, making sure I understood it. Now, I also am using this other command line program to automatically remove silence from the videos. And, this was something I was doing even before we came into this sprint, but something that was causing some pain was that, well, by default, this program actually doesn't compress the videos. So how it works at a high level is for each and every frame of the video, Zoom, which is how I'm recording things, records at a static, flat 25 frames per second. So for each of the 25 frames in a second, this program actually checks if there's audio going along with those frames. And there's a threshold. So if you have a certain number of frames that have passed without any audio, then it will actually remove those frames. So it removes silence. You can see you can actually set the number of frames here. And depending on your frame rate, that actually corresponds to a different number of time. So like I said, I'm recording at 25 frames per second. If someone's recording at 60 frames per second, well, then they're going to have to set a bigger frame margin to get the same effect. But at any rate, it automatically removes silence from videos, but it was not compressing the videos as it did this, because it was basically concatenating together all of the frames using FFmpeg on the back end, but it wasn't compressing anything. And so I had to figure out how you get it to, this is using the H.264 video codec. And I'm using a compression factor of about 30. It ranges from like 1 to, I think it's like 51 or something. So this is basically how much you sacrifice the quality as trading off in video compression size. So previously when I was doing this, the videos that I was uploading to YouTube were ending up being like 2 or 3 gigabytes because it wasn't compressing the video. And so I had to figure out how to compress it. And it doesn't sound so hard, but figuring out exactly what flags I had to use in this command actually took me a long time, especially since this is not how I would design my command line program, but you actually have to use like this thing here before you use these options. It's called like an option group, I think. And that confused me because the documentation wasn't, it's not that it was bad, but it wasn't immediately obvious, for me as a neophyte here to figure out how to run the command how I wanted it to. So, all that aside, I also spent some time seeing if I could do filtering based on movement. So the package I'm using here is called Auto Editor. I do very much like it. I think it's a very awesome pack. I mean, you can see the whole point here is that you don't actually have to sit there and manually edit your files. The computer does it for you, right? But one of the things it actually supports is using motion detection. So if you are silent in your video and the mouse isn't moving, then maybe you want to cut that. But maybe if you're shooting a screencast, a tutorial and something where you're not talking, but you want your mouse to show up on the screen, well, how do you do that? So it has, these flags here, and you can do audio or motion, audio and motion, and even, exclusive or and stuff like that. You can see there's some handy dandy pictures here. But so I was going to try to set this up just to see if it was something I might want to do for tutorials and stuff. Now for teaching recordings where you're going through a slideshow, like over here, well, you don't really need the mouse that much for this, as long as you set up takes, like static frames on the page intelligently. You don't really need to be able to capture mouse movement without audio. But if you're ever doing a screencast tutorial, maybe that's a good thing. However, the problem with recording with most audio or with most video software is that it records in a lossy format. So MP4 is lossy. So Zoom in particular, I'm doing a compressed MP4. So you actually have all of these small pixel changes when you compress the format, because as things change, you're not guaranteed to have exactly the same pixels across the entire screen. And so I had a conversation with one of the guys on the Discord server that supports this video application, sort of saying, hey, I was trying to use the movement-based flags and it didn't seem to be working. And, what am I doing wrong? Stuff like that. And so we were talking, and it sounds like one way that you might be able to get around this is to use lossless screen recording software. So you record files without any compression, without any lossiness, and then that will let you perhaps better evaluate the movement commands. Now, at this point, I was like, okay, that's a little bit too hardcore. I don't really need this behavior, but I'm just bringing it up because for some people who do screencast tutorials, step by step, where they want to show their mouse movement, but they don't want to have to talk 24/7 while they're moving their mouse, something that's more of like a demo rather than a presentation, then figuring this out might be worth it. I mean, see some messy errors there. And it took a while to figure out that was essentially what I'd have to do. All right, so I don't want to get any more off in the weeds there than I already have. The other thing, this is sort of a sneak preview of something that's going to come in the future for me, is I was doing research on GoPros, action cameras in general. I have a lot of products that, I want to kind of review in person. I need a camera shot to take this. And I'd always been meaning to do the research here, but never gotten around to it. So I was researching how to get good point of view footage, and also how to clean up your footage from GoPros. GoPros have excellent image stabilization, but the colors and the contrast, the default settings aren't so great out of the box. And so there's this guy who runs a mountain biking channel that I follow, who he and his wife, I think, were like professional videographers, or at any rate, they know a lot about photography. And so they have this video. I don't really need to show it, I guess, actually, on how to set up your GoPro. And so I've done a bunch of research here in preparation for doing that in the future. And I don't know exactly when that will be, but, that was research, several hours of research at least there. Okay, almost done. Just a couple more things that happened this sprint. So another one was just using a spreadsheet here to track some of the, or just some of the fiction that I've, consumed over the years. I'd always meant to organize things like this before, And something that I wanted to do was to be able to dynamically sort by different genres and stuff. So just keeping a library here, you can see I just gave some examples, and I'm not going to show you my actual watch list here, but sort by medium. So if it's anime or just a normal movie or whatever. And let's say I wanted to find a movie that had the genres of action, and then like, do I have one for sci-fi maybe? No, action and let's say like fantasy. So fantasy and action. Well, you can actually sort by multiple things until you get whatever combination of these flags you want. So you can see here are some of the genres, and you can of course define your own. It's not super hard to set this up if you have any experience in Excel. I worked for a while for a consulting firm in Atlanta when I had an internship in college. So I'm pretty comfortable in spreadsheet programs, and it's really helped a lot because something like this is kind of like if you were to throw a full programming language at it, it's kind of overkill. Like you could, maybe you'd have a little bit better user interface, but I set this up in maybe 20 minutes or something. Whereas if you were to code out a computer program for it, it would take you quite a bit longer than that. So this is just something I was messing around with to organize some of that. And then finally, last thing that I spent some time on this sprint. I mean, actually, this hasn't been even completely exhaustive. This is probably just the greatest hit version, but I helped a friend set up a website. He is launching a technical writing business, and I helped do some of the design work here on the text box here and the background images, and I think it came out pretty well. He had another set of acquaintances we have that were helping him with the DNS and the hosting and stuff. But I did do some of the design work here. And so, that was even more unplanned time in the sprint here. All right, well, that's just at a very high level. Many of the things that I've been working on the last couple of weeks. There's probably even more than that, but that's just at least an idea of it. So I'm going to go ahead now and, oopsies. Not mean to do that. Go ahead now and go over some of the actual retro stuff. So we just went over all the things I did. That's the sprint review. What did you do? Does it function? Now we're going to go over the retro stuff. So what went well and what didn't go so well. So always best practice to start with what went well. At least that's what we do at work in retros. So as you can see, I did get a fair bit done in the last 2 weeks. So this is 2 weeks since I posted the sprint planning video. I'm going to post another sprint planning video today. But in these 2 weeks, well, I got all that stuff done. But of course, here you can see that as I've been saying repeatedly throughout here, the fact that my burn down looks like that, which is not much of a burn down, well, that fact isn't going to trouble me overly here, just because of the purpose that I'm using this for is as an organization tool for myself rather than, an agenda not to be disobeyed. However, with the understanding that if you're trying to get an understanding of how Agile is supposed to work from these videos that I'm doing, yeah, do as I say, not as I do. Because if I were to have a burn down like that for my team at work, the team that I help coordinate work for in our sprint planning and stuff, I would 100% be exiled from running sprints because that's not a good burn down at all. But anyhow, as we see here, I did get quite a bit of stuff done. And it will always sort of be a balance, I think, figuring out how much I want to lock myself into following the plan versus how much I just kind of, do things off the cuff or as they come up. I think there's a balance to be drawn here. If I have actual deadlines, well, and then I'm sure I'll stick to the tasks more. But some of this will just depend on circumstances as well. And so that's why I'm not overly worried about, my failure to complete everything I had planned because, well, if I didn't finish it, I can just move it into the next sprint. So what didn't go so well? Well, as you see, I didn't really even come close to finishing any of the work. So the task work relating, especially to the ministry website, kind of got pushed back a little bit as I focused on the videos more. And the other thing here was that my time budgeting wasn't super accurate. How long it would take, maybe that's not immediately evident because I really didn't burn a lot of the hours here, but the time estimations weren't so great on the videos. And I'll get into that, in a couple slides here. But these were the things, well, basically as a sprint, as a development organization sprint, yeah, I did not do so great on this one. but like I said, there are some reasons for this. So we've talked about many of them as I went through the review here. Here's the audio thing I was mentioning about. That was a couple of days on the very first weekend here that I spent doing that. I also mentioned trying to figure out how to get the videos to get properly compressed when you remove the command line tool to remove silence on them, so that we're compressing with that H.264 audio codec rather than uncompressed, so that when I upload to YouTube, it takes 5 minutes rather than an hour. I also worked some overtime in my job during the last couple of weeks. Not a lot, but some. I helped my friend set up his business website, right? This one here that I helped do some of the design on. Oops. And then here's where I was getting at some of the tasking stuff on the videos. So DevOps, this interface that I was talking up as, being a great way to organize your work, even external to your job, right? This agile workflow, that way of looking at things. Well, you can set your capacity for yourself day by day, right? So you see, I'd set my capacity here 2 hours a day. Well, the problem is that it doesn't let you set capacity differently for different days. And so why that's important for me is because I work a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, I don't have nearly as much time on weekdays as I do on weekends. And so what would be nice is if I could set, my weekend capacity on Saturday and Sunday to be something a lot higher, maybe like 8 hours a day versus my weekday capacity of 2 hours a day, which would average out to give me a daily capacity quite a bit higher than just 2 hours a day. So what I had done initially was thinking, I'm going to be doing a lot of video stuff on the weekend. So maybe I just won't task those things out. I'll just know that I'm going to have to do them, and I'll just task out the other stuff that I want to get done. But that ended up not really tracking the work very effectively. And so what I'm going to be doing moving forward is just going to be tasking myself higher every day, even though I know that if I task myself at 4 hours a day, so 4 times 7 is about 30 hours a week, it's 28 hours a week. Well, I won't actually be able to work 4 hours on weekdays because I'll have too much other stuff I'm doing. So maybe max 2 hours, 2.5 hours on weekdays. But then all of that other time will get spent on Saturday and Sunday when I have more time on the weekends. So just so that I can have the capacity in the sprints here. So I look at the task board. I believe that I'm only tasked at, well, I don't remember exactly how much, but 2 hours times 14 days. So I think 28 hours total here, versus I could probably almost double that if I counted all the weekend time. So, more like 56 hours in the sprint. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be tasking it, with higher hours every day, with the understanding that I won't actually be able to sync those hours in on weekdays, but I'll make up for the loss on weekends. So on the off chance that a Microsoft person actually ever sees this video, it would be really, really nice in our interface here if you could have different people having different capacities. So like setting different capacities per day per person, because that would let at least the use case that I'm trying to use DevOps for. And I mean, I Googled around and saw on the internet other people had similar requests. So what happens if you have an intern who only works maybe 3 hours every couple of days of the week and then goes to his classes on his other days because he's working part-time while also being a student? Well, then he doesn't have capacity every day. He only has capacity some days of the week. And so the ability to set different capacities per day per person in any team in DevOps would be super useful. All right, so given that one of the biggest failings here was not being able to track the video time very effectively, well, now that I've done it for 2 weeks, I think I have a better idea of how the time breaks down here. So for my videos, and my videos being, oh, come on, load, being these here. So the Satan's World System, that video series that we're going through here. Well, since I'm the one in control of those topics, it's a lot easier for me to timestamp these videos. So to timestamp and write summaries and titles and everything for them, and probably less than 30 minutes. 30 minutes is probably a bit conservative. But I do have to prepare more because, this is me teaching. It's not so discussion focused. It's very much, me going through the material that I've organized and prepared. And so, total for 2 videos a week, we're looking at probably under 5 hours, but not too much under it. So 4.5 maybe. So maybe 3 hours of preparation, an hour to actually record the videos, and then 30 minutes to do the timestamps and summaries and stuff. Now, the thing that is an even bigger time sink is when we're doing our discussion group videos. So thus far, we're doing about 3 of those a week. So each video under 30 minutes or so. Well, I still have to do some preparation to get stuff in the slide format, like even as we're using same slide format here, right? So that takes some time. And then holding the videos actually takes a good bit of time because, well, if we're being honest, we have a meeting time, but people usually trickle in a little bit. And we talk casually before and after we actually roll the formal recordings. So call that 3 hours for the whole meeting, an hour and a half of preparation, and then timestamping these, at least doing it in the detail that I want to. So we showed here that in the timestamps for these videos, if I go click on one and we go look at the timestamps in the description, I showed how detailed they were. Well, doing that properly actually takes a fair bit of time. And so maybe we'll wait for that to load. I don't know why it's being so slow. But getting the timestamps and then writing the summaries on top of the timestamps maybe it takes 2.5 hours or something along those lines. And so the total time expenditure here, we're looking really more at like 7 hours a week to get the 3 videos for our discussion. All right, so there's the video. And in any case, so altogether, we're looking at probably something like 11 hours a week just to do the videos for this Bible study channel. So that's 5 videos a week, 10 videos every sprint. And so breaking out at about 2 hours of video, and that's including all preparation, all time stamping, all summaries, and organization and stuff. Well, that's actually in video production spheres, that's not bad at all. But I'm not doing any manual editing, so editing out takes or whatever. I'm doing everything automatically, with the removal of silence and all that. But still, given that I have a full-time 9 to 5, I'm still starting out above 50 hours a week of time commitment. And that's actually not counting my commute. So if you count my commute, depending how many days I telework a week, it's even quite a bit higher than this. And then, on top of that, I cook and I work out and all this other stuff. So, you see how, it's not like I have just oodles of free time anyway. So that's the retro here. We talked about here how there's some reasons why I didn't end up having a very pretty burn down this time, and perhaps some of that will be better in the future. But at the same time, we're not going to tie ourselves so formally to this that we get all disturbed by the fact that it wasn't so perfect. Because again, this is just a tool for me personally to organize all of the work I'm doing. All right, well, I think that's going to be it for this video. Another video that I'll probably post today as well is going to be the sprint planning video for the next sprint, which honestly I think will be a lot shorter than the last one because it's basically going to be like, hey, we're still going to do all these things that we made tasks for, but we didn't do. So, but that will be in the next video. And this video was just talking about the sprint review, so what I did and the retro regarding that. So thanks for watching, and maybe you can check out the video for the next sprint.